welcome you. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us who you are and what you do for those crazy people who don't know you yet.
Who are they? I'm Eyal Iffergan. Most people will probably sort of know me for the better part of the last 15, 20 years. I ran, was sort of widely recognized like the premier legal consulting practice, Hyperion Global Partners. We ended up about 4 years ago being acquired by Epic to sort of anchor a new kind of transformation initiative for Epic to get into advisory. And I stayed on with that group for a number of years to manage the transition, help grow sort of the practice. And about a year or so ago, I left there to kind of start the next adventure. So I run an organization today known as Quantum Foundry. And we focus, primarily on business and technology transformation for the legal profession. Our clients are, corporate law departments, typically of the Fortune 1000, as well as, AmLaw 200 law firms, to help them to design and architect, truly sort of transformation programs and initiatives to help them do the work they need to do better, more effectively, more efficiently, and deliver better results. Certainly leveraging both, our dozens of years of experience, with it, and our expertise in technology, data management, process automation, AI, and the like.
So you've been around this for a while, as have
I
I.
like to use numbers.
That's why I say a while. People can guess what that means. We've been at this for a while. We've seen this whole thing forming and storming and evolving. The explosion of legal ops, of course, kind of was one big thing, and now AI seems to have come in, and I kind of want to say AI smacking legal tech around in the face a little bit. I don't know how to describe it. But you and I, again, we've been around it. But you have an interesting background in that, obviously you have this consulting advisory background, but it's balanced really well with the research part of what Hyperion, was and was known for. I remember I stumbled upon Hyperion when I was still in-house in Microsoft, and I was like, oh gosh, somebody's doing there's some good deep stuff here. Yeah. Just tell me a little bit about like, I feel like the two almost go together. I mean, part of what, we do as consultants is we have to answer all these questions. So we're kind of naturally doing the research. And then you just thought, hey, we'll package it up. I mean, how should
exactly.
For buyers of tech, how should they think about, do I need a consultant or do I need a good research paper, or how would you think?
Well, you need both, right? And research. Look, Hyperion was styled as a consultancy of experts, right? And we were much more focused on kind of higher level advisory. What operations should look like, what we should expect to get out of it, than we were. Kind of really sort of technical, hands-on keyboard, creating, applications and the like. Although most of us were pretty, technical and well-versed in that. Research came about because, look, if we're experts, right? I mean, you're sort of an expert today is simply a point in time. A year from now, if you don't sort of work hard to maintain that expertise, you become sort of outdated. So a big part of what we naturally did was research, the marketplace and, build relationships with vendors and organizations and thought leaders to understand, right, what was, going on. We built research as a focused, structured program to create, an actual sort of research rubric, a formalized process, with kind of specific policies and the like, both in terms of how we do the work, the research, to keep everything sort of fair and on level ground, and that we weren't treating one solution vendor versus another differently. Right. But all just kind of to also kind of sort of eliminate bias, right, in that process, and eliminate kind of already favoritism or the like. Because as consultants, right, a lot of things that, I had observed in kind of the early days when we were first thinking about starting Iberian research was a consultant might do some project, one time in one organization, and then the next conversation they consider themselves sort of an expert and present themselves like that. And there's a lot, right, that's sort of that's left unaddressed. They don't know what they don't know. We sought to answer that question. Prior to research, a lot of the work that consultants in this space did were system selection projects, where you work with a client to define requirements, create an RFP from that, evaluate solutions and the like. Iberian research, in its sort of first iterations, was designed to really address that problem. So we conducted research with all the leading, vendors in the space. We had deep briefing sessions and questionnaires and assessment, protocols. We scored vendors on, depending on the category, but typically sort of 8 different kind of areas of competency. Although never ranked a vendor, that was sort of an important part of our process, is that based on individual requirements of the organization, right, the buyer, one system may rank higher for them than another because of where their priorities.
But let's talk about that for a bit, because I have this, we're also we are hell-bent on staying agnostic, right, on my little team.
Yeah.
And that's been such a core mission, for us. But we feel there's this kind of tension out there, certainly in the market, and there are advisory groups and consultancies that do tend to have these special, let's not call them special relationships, because of course over time we all develop special relationships that are based on trust and experience, but I mean financial relationships.
Exactly.
With vendors, and we've stayed away from it. I've even put up some posts on this to just get feelers from the community, from buyers, how people should think about, there's 2 sides of this coin, because like you said, you're not ranking them, and I think that's one thing from kind of the subjective provider. You're not providing an opinion on good, better, worse, whatever. But when a client comes to you, now they're paying you for your advisory service, right? They are paying you for your advice. I see these 2 very different approaches that consultancies take. One is, well, yes, I have a preferred list of vendors that is known, that is transparent to everybody, and yes, I get financial compensation from referring them to you, but I vetted them, so it's okay. Versus the other side, which I play in the other lane, which is I take no financial compensation from vendors. So each and every time it's a fresh new look at what your needs are and what I know about the marketplace.
Yep.
But in reality, there are always the few that I know best that I tend to lean to. I mean, I'm just being very, very transparent, because I'm, there's a reason people love Costco. They've done the research for me. They have shown me the 3 best socks I could take. They're not even 3. It's sometimes just the one. This is all you need. Right now it's the Puma. Next 3 months from now, I'm gonna go back. It's Adidas socks, and I'm like, okay, Costco's decided for me. So that's a long-winded question, but I'm like, where do you lean now? And now that you're kind of done with that part, you've restarted your a niche consultancy. How do you think about it now?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we have to sort of acknowledge, right, that the first question a lawyer, sort of asks in starting their journey around looking at, kind of improving technology, selecting something new, is, what does everybody else use, right? And that's an important factor, right? I mean, let's sort of not ignore it. There's a reason why, a system may own, 80%, market share in a particular category, or whatever it is. You can't, sort of ignore that. The way we sort of develop the research is this, sort of structured, objective set of research that gave sort of both kind of factual, clear, concise information about the systems, but also in the context of other market trends and related, kind of benchmarks, in the market, and what people are thinking about, how their, others in the market are investing, what they're looking, to do, in the near future and the like, and all of that. I sort of used to summarize it like this. When I'm sitting in front of a client and he asks me, well, we hear all this about legal operations, or suppose these days AI and whatever, what do you think? And I can say, right, sort of as an expert, well, look, over my many years in this, market, all the experience I've had, all the clients, all this relevancy, right, I can get into all sort of the credibility. Here's what I think. But it's so much more powerful to then say also, but 62% of your peers are doing this and prioritizing that. Now, a lot of my opinion is probably formed by that, sort of as well, but there's real empirical data to kind of back that up. And when you look at it that way, I mean, one of the reasons we don't, we never rank, there's never a best, system, because that's sort of like, that operates in a monolith, right? I mean, there is no best for everyone. And look, I mean, some system may know any percent of the market share, and that's sort of the safe choice, but you're, a different type of department. You have a lot of sort of different ways of working. The business is, different and isn't part of the 80%. So, a smaller niche, provider may actually be the better choice for you. And that's how we get, to it. And, a lot of the work we've done with clients is, that research report serves as a primer, right? Yeah. This is sort of how you get smart about the industry and the market and what your options are, right? We do kind of all of that research for you, so you don't have to get on the Google. But then we help translate that into what you're doing. And that's, look, it turned into a business for sure. And it was a successful one, but it's always sort of been, kind of organic in the way that, I think, and sort of like, my worldview, and the way we sort of, operated as a consultancy. So it's very much, kind of, still a part of my thought processing.
Of course. So, okay, we can't not talk about, of course, contracting data, contracting automation, contracting technology, because everything you're alluding to in terms of the 80% market share as an example, this is a fabulous space where there is no one leader. And not only is there no one leader, but there are so many players that it's impossible to keep up with. And I think I'm going to say it out loud. I can't keep up. I know a thing or two about CLM tech and contracting automation, and anybody who's pretending to be able to keep up right now they're just not being honest, because there are just too many. There are so many solutions popping on the market, and now it's an explosive space because of AI. So there was already, people used to complain that there are too many CLM systems, right? I'm doing air quotes around CLM, but for CLM, if you're contracting, like life cycle, right? Like the big, start to end workflow data, extract the whole thing. That used to be too many for a lot of people. And then, of course, within the last 2 to 3 years, literally countless, right? Narrow, specific, AI first, contract review tools more than anything. So if you are doing it all over again in your research, how would you tackle this space? Even categorizing. Let's you and I talk about categories, because I change around all the time how we even categorize them. When we talk to clients, right? We're like, well, that's this kind of tool, but not really. And they call it different things, right? And the vendors are calling themselves different things. But I don't know, where should we start? And is this a project you and I need to kick off to help save the world from themselves?
We could look at that. Although, listen, this is sort of one scenario where I'm like, well, I'm glad I'm not running a research, program on it, because the market's being, sort of flooded. And we're seeing a lot of, AI native systems coming to market, a lot of startups. And I mean, I feel like every day, this week I learned about 2 new CLM systems that I was not aware of. What I find interesting too, and maybe a little bit, dangerous, is they're starting to market themselves as not just CLM focused systems, even though that's really kind of where they spent all their development efforts and the like, but more enterprise, technologies. And I think that, Look, I think that's what's difficult. When we ran research programs at Hyperion Research, again, because of the structure around it, when there's a new and emerging market, we often don't do a report like right at the beginning of that market, right? We understand that there's a lot of interest coming to play and the market's still defining itself.
Yeah.
And so we wait for a lot of that to shake out. So yeah, I mean, it's I don't have a good answer, for that, and I certainly don't, know everything about all of these systems. What I can say is that it is such a nascent, market. Now people are figuring out what CLM even means, yet alone, looking for systems to address, a need right now. There are a lot of undefined needs, so it's difficult to find a good answer for a bad question.
Right.
And this market has been very marketing driven, very marketing forward, and so there are a lot of claims made out there that simply, I suppose I'll speak for myself more anecdotally, not seeing any evidence of these panaceas that are getting advertised out there. So I think a lot of what I think sort of is often lacking. This market is driven by kind of the AI buzz. Every AI market is sort of every kind of technology market is getting sort of flooded with that. I think because of all the marketing, all these sort of promises being made, the smoke and mirrors effect that sort of occurs with that, I think buyers are sort of left with a impression that the systems can do more than they really can. And though I am kind of a big fan of AI and it's certainly the potential that exists there, I think we're still very much in the early days. And I used to describe myself as an AI skeptic because I've always sort of been, trust but verify. I'm like, wow, it sounds good, looks good, but I want to see it actually work not in sort of a scripted demo, but in a real world kind of scenario. And those are few.
That's the thing
between. So I think being pragmatic is important with AI.
Right. Well, we've been obviously the trust but verifies. This is the time to really push for POCs. These are not heavy, big implementations. You don't need fancy sandboxes with IT teams helping you figure it out. There is absolutely no reason to buy any kind of AI native solution without a POC on your own content. And I think that's just a simple fact. So if anybody takes anything away from this chat, it's don't take no for an answer. There is go to another one, go to another competitor, because there's enough of them that you could pick and choose. It's a buyer's market for contracting AI kind of technologies right now. So get that POC on your real documents, please. That's that for sure. I think, Eyal, you made a really important point, a little bit more elegantly than I have been, because I've just been getting on a soapbox and annoyed with the content marketing angle on this, because it is so fluffy. I fell for it yesterday. I actually did a post on LinkedIn about it, and I was like, this is going to be a grumpy, annoying post rant, but I made the mistake of downloading some little checklist, study guide, whatever, on something around contracting, because of course I'm always trying to see what the vendors are putting out there. We put out our own, again, agnostic.
And that's part of our natural research process, right? Kind of internally too, right? It's important to know.
Exactly. We have to know. Well, I think on this one, it was 18 pages, a cumulative, maybe, I don't know, 500 words. I don't even know what it was. I'm flipping. I'm like, it's beautiful. It wasn't even like data. It wasn't like one big graph in the middle of a page. It was just blank space and words and few words, beautifully graphic design, whatever. I don't even want to get started on it because it's so frustrating. People are spending time and money on this. So those vendors who are at a loss for substantive content, they really need people to help them. They need people who have lived it and breathed it, either operations leaders or, even more importantly, I think, commercial transactions experts, contract managers, paralegals. I don't care what angle they come from, but they need people who've lived and breathed contracting, because What I'm seeing is a complete disconnect between what the technology can do. Let's just assume it can, table stakes, right? Check. The tech should be good enough at what you claim. But how it fits in a process, to your point about, that business's process, their culture, their workflows, their weird nuances, and how on Thursday, Susie likes to review contracts, but by Friday, Susie won't respond to your approval request. How are you going to code that into a workflow?
Yep.
Right. And I think that continues to be overlooked. And I just want to shout from the rooftops, the unsexy process definition is still the secret sauce to a successful tech implementation.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, now we have sort of subcategories of AI. I hear a lot about agentic AI, and I find it, all just kind of, fascinating, because AI, I have not seen any evidence that it is sort of this quantum leap that it gets sort of marketed as. First of all, we've been doing process automation for years as a bona fide tech category known as business process management, BPM. There are great, enterprise systems in that space. Is AI, agentic AI, better than those? I mean, I do think it's the next generation, right, of that kind of business and enterprise automation, and it does a lot of things better, but it's an incremental increase. It is not a quantum leap. One of the big things that's missing, in my opinion, in kind of the solution space is actual expertise. In such a kind of early, market, people market sort of the tool and its potential, and don't sort of inject expertise into, relevant, use cases. And when you try to market yourself as being able to do everything, from a buyer's perspective, you see that and you're like, okay, nothing about this is actually answering the question I have for my need, right? And it's usually needs that drive people to, go out and do the research. And not just some sort of esoteric, hey, I think we need some new, random technology today, right? I mean, so everything's kind of tied to, an ROI, right, for every investment. So, yeah, it's a difficult market to sort of wrap your arms around.
It is, and I think we're all coming at it from slightly different angles, because it's just so new, and like anything else, you're looking at it from your lens and through a window in your house, and it looks different to others. I think one thing also I'd love to get your thoughts on, there's this, I see them as like layers of AI solutions. There's obviously the general LLMs, right? The ChatGPTs, the Geminis, the kind of the stuff that our parents, grandparents, cousins, kids, everybody is already using. That's general. Let's hope that they're at least paying for it if they're putting anything at all personal or private in it. But that's one layer. Yep. And we see lawyers also have been experimenting with that, especially small solo, small legal teams. Fine. Again, please pay for the license if you're using that general LLM. Then we're seeing some legal specific, right, solutions that are built on top of those. I kind of want to keep repeating it, because so many buyers are really still just don't know how to even think about this tech, and yet they're feeling this pressure and FOMO to use it and buy it. Just correct me if I'm wrong, or if you have a different way of explaining, like there's the general, there's the layered with some of the legal, like Harvey, Legora, those two jump out as the two kind of big legal, focused ones. GCAI focused on the in-house, and then there's similar ones, I'm assuming, for law firms. And then there's your deeply substantive ones that go even a layer further than that. So contract being one example, spend management being another. But then on top of that, you still need to be really good at prompting. And I feel like lawyers are getting so confused. They keep hearing about prompt engineering. They need to be prompt experts. And then they need to understand all these layers. So, right now, if you have one of your either former clients or one of your, buddies in the field come to you who's in-house feeling this pressure to find AI, how would you walk them through these categories of options without even getting into the deep domain ones, but just how do you think they should approach it?
Honestly, the first conversation I have with them will not be about the AI and the systems available out there. It'll be, what is the nature of their data and what they have available. For decades, right, in kind of the technology space, we've always sort of had this adage, garbage in, garbage out. AI can't provide good results, right? It's like I said before, it can't provide a good answer to a bad question.
Right.
And if it doesn't have access to the tools, right, to do it, you know, in that sort of instance, and I think this is a lot of the existing, you know, use cases, you know, AI is simply acts as a kind of a fancier, sort of more automated natural language method of extracting metadata from, you know, from documents, from contracts and the like. The real missing piece there, and I think where the real game changer will be, especially in legal, is the so what, right? I mean, you know, you extracted this data, you compared it, you know, to other, you know, contracts. I will always be skeptical about comparing it to the right contracts, finding other relevant, you know, documents and not stuff that's entirely irrelevant. I constantly sort of come up against that, but I want to understand the so what, right? If this contract's got this term that's so divergent from what we did,
Right.
you know, in other instances, so what? I mean, because in and of itself, that looks like an anomaly. I get that, but maybe it belongs there. Maybe the others
Yeah.
were lacking. So,
You know what's great about that? Also, as a tip, again, for anybody, you know, who tunes in or watches this later, asking so what is great during demos as well.
no,
So,
no.
you know what I mean? Like, so you're talking about so what
What's
substantive.
actionable? What am I going to do with this?
So what? Yeah. So the demo's shiny. You're like, oh, I can get that. And we see it all the time. It's like going to a buffet when you're hungry for one French fry. You're like, I
Yeah.
really just want a French fry. And like, sure, here you go with this buffet. And suddenly you're like, I'm gonna get sick if I eat all this, but buyers don't know that because it's so exciting. And so it's an interesting, you know, chicken and egg. I don't have the data. That's why I want the AI. And you're like, well, but what are you going to feed it? Where are you going to, what's it going to, you know, what's it going to learn from?
Yeah.
And that continues to be such a
And
gap.
look, AI's ability to kind of streamline that getting the data, you know, process. I don't want the impression that that's not useful and valuable. It is, and it shaves hours off of, you know, kind of existing sort of tasks and activities. Allows knowledge workers to focus on more value-added activities. But it's important, and I think this is sort of where kind of the disconnect often exists, to set your expectations appropriately, right? That, you know, what you're buying will give you that, or has a potential, right, to sort of, you know, kind of give you that streamlining, you know, of operations, you know, process. But it's not going to tell you, you know, what your contracts should say. It's not going to tell you what you need to do in your organization to mitigate your specific individual risks around that, you know, business relationship.
That's right. It still requires so much of that hard work that is the hardest part of any automation is you have to know your own rules. You have to know your own boundaries. And it's not just, I see it a lot, obviously, in the contract playbooking. You know, you have a playbook, do you have a play? Can we help you create a playbook? The AI will create a playbook and all these variations in between. At the end of the day, somebody's got to some human has got to decide what that answer is. Now, that human can decide, hey, I'm fine with whatever the big LLMs are putting out there as a best practice. That's their prerogative, but they have to understand what it is that they're accepting.
Yep.
And then others have to take the time. They have to do the work. And I think people are like,
I would never trust today, right, AI to create a playbook. And I would frankly, you know, I'd probably sort of stop listening anytime someone promised that they could, because to do something like that requires a level of judgment
right.
that a machine is not yet capable of doing.
Yeah, I think so. In our last minute here, I think that is a great ending point of sort of just some real clarity on, you know, the using it to create a playbook. You know, that's a big leap. Now, there are some tiny companies.
Use it to inform your decisions for a playbook.
That's an amazing use case. I agree with you. I will go so far as to say and push a little bit that if you're a tiny company, you don't have any budget for legal, you don't know or love contracts, just know that it might be good enough for you, but just know that it's not good enough probably for a substantive, deeply experienced commercial lawyer. And if you can't afford that, maybe AI right now is really a shortcut. But that's also like
You're exactly on point. I think that's where expectations should be set for value is, good enough. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good, to advance sort of your own operations and advance the market, too. But understand, for all the marketing hype, we're not in sort of the state of perfect anywhere near it yet.
We're nowhere near it. Love that. With that, we're right at time. These can go on forever. I love these.
Yeah, that is fine.
Always fun to talk to you. We chat all the time offline. I thought that some people might enjoy to listen into one of our chats. So thank you for joining me. We'll say goodbye, and for everybody to have a happy, wonderful rest of their Friday with that.
And Happy New Year. It's to a strong 2026.
It is not too late to keep saying Happy New Year. I agree.